Welcome to my YouTube channel Echo Aftab. In my today's session, we'll be seeing evolution of the present economic system, that is over a period of time how the economic thought has evolved. That is, we'll try to understand the history of economic thought. So welcome to evolution of the present economic system. Myself, Professor Aftab Bhai. So let us see how the economic thinking has arisen. The field of economics underwent a remarkable expansion over a period of time as the world economy has grown increasingly large and complex. Friends, there is tremendous change in the way we look at the economy right from the ancient times till this modern era. So you can see this is the evolution of human beings. This is the evolution of mankind as per Darwin. The same has happened with regard to economic thought from the ancient era till to the modern times. So you can see here in the first panel what we can see. This is the painting of the nomadic tribes, those people who used to roam around, hunt, kill the animals, make their food, and again go in search of animals. So this was what at the beginning of the civilization. And then you can see this is what happened when our people started to settle down in the places and formed their villages and started the activities of cultivation and domestication. So from nomadic tribes, that is from hunting and gathering, we settled down to become agriculturist and we started cultivation. So the same thing, friends, I would like to show you in the form of a video. So you can see here.
Did was get really good at farming. My ancestors used to make their living by hunting wild animals for food. They were constantly on the move following the herds. As they traveled, they would also gather wild berries, nuts, and greens to eat. But they often didn't know where their next meal would come from. It was a hard way to live. Then they discovered they could plant and harvest a kind of wheat they found growing wild. And they also found out how to tame wild goats and sheep and raise them for food. Grandfather calls that domestication. It meant they didn't have to hunt for food anymore. They could grow it themselves. And so my ancestors stopped wandering and stayed here. They discovered that food grows better here than almost anywhere else. He says it's easy to grow food in our valley because the soil here is so fertile. And he says that is because of the mountains up north. It snows a lot up there in the winter. When the snow... Then the rivers rise over their banks and flood the valley. And they dump a lot of really good dirt on the land. It's great for growing food in. We eat really well. We grow barley and wheat, lots of beans and fresh vegetables, and fruits like melons, dates, apples, figs, and grapes. Our animals give us milk, cheese, and meat, and there are always plenty of fish in the rivers. The biggest problem was never knowing when a flood might come and wash away their crops. Even if the crops survived that, they might die in the summer when it's so hot and there's not enough water. But my people didn't give up. Instead, we actually invented a way to control the river. First, we learned how to build levees. Those are big piles of earth between the fields and the river. They're too tall for the river to get over, so they prevent the floods. Then we made gated ditches around the fields, and when the crops needed water in the summer, we would just open the gates and let some river water flow in.
So friends, this is how the evolution of our civilization started. So let us start with the first formal system, and that is mercantilism. What is mercantilism? So mercantilists are the people who believed in exports. So mercantilism was an economic system of trade that spanned from the 16th century to the 18th century. It was based on the idea that a nation's wealth and power were best served by increasing the exports, and so involved increasing trade. So the bottom line, mercantilists believed about international trade. For them, the welfare of the country depends upon the magnitude of international trade. That is what is shown in the picture. So everywhere the ships are moving around the continent, and you can see the goods are exchanged from one country to another country. This is the core philosophy of mercantilism. After that came physiocrats. Who are physiocrats? The physiocrats were a group of economists who believed that the wealth of nations were derived solely from agriculture. So they were tilted more towards nature. Their theories originated in France and were most popular during the second half of the 18th century. So this is what? So they believed upon natural resources, they believed on land, and they were more concentrated on agricultural activities. Who are these physiocrats? Friends, the meaning of the word physiocracy, it's a Greek word which means government of nature. So they give more importance to nature. It was originated in France in late 18th century, and the source of national wealth is from productive work through land and land development. So Francois Quesnay and Anaerobate Jacques Turgot were the pioneers of this physiocracy. Physiocracy is perhaps the first well-developed theory of economics. Remember friends, physiocracy was the first well-developed theory of economics, but it immediately preceded the first modern school of thought of economics, and that is classical economics, which began with the publication of Adam Smith's monumental work, and that is Wealth of Nations in 1776. Adam Smith, the father of economics, who had written Wealth of Nations, it gave the founding stone for a systematic study of economics. So from here we move on to our economics schools of thought, starting with Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. So let us go ahead and see. So the first school of economic thought is the classical school. What is classical school? The classical school, the father of classical school, Adam Smith, is the founder of modern economics. He advocated non-government intervention policy, that is laissez-faire policy. He is the author of the book The Wealth of Nations, and he is the first to create the concept of gross domestic product. So here Adam Smith for you. So classical economics is a broad term that refers to the dominant school of thought for economics in the 18th and 19th centuries. Scottish economist Adam Smith is the progenitor of classical economic theory. So when you speak about classical school of thought, or when you speak about evolution of economic thought, friends, the first systematic study started from Adam Smith, and his school of thought is called as classical school of thought. So what are the main elements of classical school? So the basic tenets of free market, that is the market is free, the market decides everything, laissez-faire policy, non-government intervention, and the invisible hand. Everything will come to equilibrium. There is no need of any sort of intervention by anyone. That is what the core philosophy of classical school of thought. They focused mainly on supply. If you remember J.B. Say, what he said, supply creates its own demand. That is what J.B. Say is also from classical school of thought. So their main focus was on supply. And they believed in labor theory of value. So all the goods that were produced, the cost of production was measured in terms of labor. That is what, in terms of man hours of labor. If you study the classical theory of international trade, there we don't speak about wages, we speak about man hours of wage. That is what, man hours that is contributed in production. So it is basically labor theory of value. Then from classical school came neoclassical school of thought. So it emerged from classical school. Now, what about neoclassical school of thought? So, neoclassical economics is really the birth of mathematics as an inescapable tool for constructing theories. You cannot escape mathematics. That is what. So, who brought into picture this neoclassical school? It is Alfred Marshall. Friends, Alfred Marshall, the father of neoclassical economics, the originator of the book Principles of Economics. He is the one who wrote the book Principles of Economics. Very soon I'll show you this particular book in a video. I'll come directly in front of the camera and I'll show you all these books. It was written in 1890. It is a stereotypical economist. So here, friends, Marshall has written this particular book and he has made use of lot of mathematics to convey what the theories of economics are. So you can say this Marshallian school of thought, neoclassical school of thought, which saw economics through the spectacles of mathematics and where he has extensively made use of marginal analysis and calculus. So thanks to Alfred Marshall, that till today the law of demand that we are studying, the elasticity of demand that we are studying, is all the contribution of Alfred Marshall. So Alfred Marshall, neoclassical economist, and he has written the book Principles of Economics in 1890. So what are the main features of neoclassical school, friends? It evolved from classical school. Even neoclassical is believed in free market economy, that is no government intervention. Government, आप सिर्फ पुलिस स्टेट का काम करो, आप सिर्फ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर क्रिमिनल एक्टिविटीज को मेंटेन करो, इकोनॉमी उसके हाल पे छोड़ दो, वहां पे मार्केट है, मार्केट विल टेक केयर ऑफ द economic activities. So here he focused on both demand and supply. That is what market equilibrium, this concept came into picture because of Alfred Marshall. He gave importance to both demand and supply. So he was the one who spoke about the concept of equilibrium, market equilibrium, that is equality between the demand and supply, the equality between the two important market forces, demand and supply. And it is he who spoke about the marginal analysis. For everything he spoke about marginal analysis. He spoke about marginal utility, he spoke about marginal revenue, he spoke about marginal cost, he spoke about marginal productivity, marginal product, and so on concepts. And all these concepts are very important in optimization rules. So this is our neoclassical school. Let's welcome Alfred Marshall. So the two founding fathers of classical school and neoclassical school, Adam Smith's Wealth of Nation and Alfred Marshall's Principles of Economics. The you can say stepping stones, the building blocks of economics evolution, the evolution of the economic theory, economic thought. Then from here, friends, at the same time, another school of thought came into the picture in parallel to neoclassical school, and that is Marxist school. Who is Marxist? Karl Marx was the one who believed very strongly in communism. As you know, we have seen in our earlier sessions about organization of economic activities, what is socialism, communism, capitalism. So Marxist is communist school of thought. So Marxism is a method of socio-economic analysis that originates in the works of 19th century German philosopher Karl Marx. So Karl Marx is a Jewish economic philosopher. Along with his friend Friedrich Engels, he published the Communist Manifesto, and he believed that there is always a class struggle between haves and have-nots. So friends, Marx had written a very famous book known as Das Kapital, which speaks about how the labor class is exploited by the bourgeois and how these people led to class conflict, how there was under evolution of wages and over exploitation of labor. This is all dealt in Marxist school of thought. So few highlights of Marxist school. It is parallel to neoclassical school. It focuses on supply. It speaks about classless society. The aim is classless. There should not be any sort of inequality among the classes, high class, lower class. He spoke about two classes, bourgeois and the proletariats. So this is Marxist school of thought, Karl Marx for you. Let us move ahead. Now you'll see an interesting feature in the slide. So this is the dividing line, friends. The red line that has come is the dividing line. So what is this red line? Above this red line, all the schools of thoughts were microeconomic schools of thought. And here on this red line, there were few more schools of thought, such as Austerian school of thought, then Schumpeterian school of thought. Schumpeter, the one who spoke about innovation theories, who gave more importance to innovation. So if there is any economic student or commerce student or management student who wants to become entrepreneur, my request to you is follow Schumpeterian school of thought, see what he has to tell for the entrepreneurs, see what he has told about the role of innovations and how it has helped not only the firms but even the economies all around. So on the border line, on this red line were Austrian school, Schumpeterian school and all those schools. So we'll not go in detail of that, we'll just jump to our next school. So before going to the next school, friends, I want to show you the books that is written by Alfred Marshall, the book that is written by Adam Smith, the book that is written by Karl Marx. All this I'll show to you. So we'll quickly go see the books and come back. Just a second. Yeah, just a small break over here. As you saw that we were discussing about evolution of economic thought over a period of time. I just wanted to show the contribution of these various economists till now, what we saw through their books. So just a quick recap, friends. We saw the beginning of human life, how we have evolved over a period of time. We saw our ancestors during the ancient times as leading a nomadic life, and then how they progressed and settled towards agriculture, how the domestication processes started, and when the trade started, what was the role or ideology of mercantilism, and then slowly we progressed towards physiocrats. And physiocrats was the first systematic school where we could see something. They were speaking about economy and how they were more dealt towards, or you can say they are more tilted towards agriculture and land resources. Then at the end of the physiocrats, it was Adam Smith, the father of economics. So I would just like to show the famous work of Adam Smith, and that is, friends, Wealth of Nations. The Wealth of Nations, written by Adam Smith in 1776. It is a complete treatise about how the economy works. So Adam Smith has taken the example of Scotland from where he is, and most of the examples he has taken is of corn with regard to the pricing, and then he has spoken about the factors of production. So it is a treatise. Friends, to understand Wealth of Nations, we need to know one more book that is written by Adam Smith, and that is the Moral Sentiments. You can say Moral Sentiments of Adam Smith is the prequel to understanding the Wealth of Nations. So this is the book which made Adam Smith the father of economics. Okay, you can say Adam Smith belonged to the, or he was a founder of the classical school of economic thought. Classical school of economic thought, Wealth of Nations, both are both go hand in hand. So it is the Wealth of Nations that brought the classical school of thought through Adam Smith, and slowly and steadily the things moved on, and we could see that at the same time there was one more great social thinker, Karl Marx. So Karl Marx has written the Capital, Das Kapital. So it is written in the year 1857. So if you see about Karl Marx, he has spoke about how there is an exploitation by the owners of the firms and how they exploited the labor force. So he spoke about two classes, one is proletariat and the other is bourgeois. So he spoke about class struggle, he spoke about exploitation of labor, and he was the first socialist, where we can say most of his ideologies are still relevant in various parts of the world. Then comes, friends, our Alfred Marshall's contribution, the founder of the neoclassical school of thought. Alfred Marshall's book, The Principles of Economics, which was published in the year 1890. It is the first book which brought into the picture the mathematics, use of mathematics in economics. So in this book, friends, it's very interesting to see how Alfred Marshall has spoken about elasticity of demand, calculation of elasticity of demand, what about marginal revenue curves, what about marginal cost curve. So this Principles of Economics books is also, we can say, is the marginal analysis book. It is purely microeconomics book. So from classical economics, the progression towards neoclassical economics, it happened because of Alfred Marshall through his book, The Principles of economics. So one more great legend in economics whom we are till today following. Then comes, friends, slowly and steadily the things improved, and we began to understand after Great Depression that the classical school and the neoclassical school was of not much help. The reason is because they were all into microeconomic school of thought. Then the breakthrough came through Lord John Maynard Keynes. And what is his book? His book is The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, which was published in the year 1936. It's a monumental book, and here gave rise to the Keynesian school of thought in economics. And from this book is the beginning of the thought of macroeconomics. This book is completely dealing with macroeconomics. So Keynesian school of thought, or you can say Keynes General Theory of of Employment, Interest and Money, okay, gave birth to the macroeconomic school of thought. And then, friends, there are other economists also, just such as Joseph Schumpeter, who has written Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy, and he has written this book in the year 1942. So here most of the around first 50 pages he has devoted it to Karl Marx ideology. So this way we can see there are various people, various economists who came into the picture and have contributed. Then just for your small reference, there is a book, Value and Capital, which is written by J.R. Hicks. In this book, friends, we move away from Alfred Marshall's cardinal analysis of utility to ordinal analysis of utility. In this book, we come across the concept of indifference curves. Indifference curves was introduced by J.R. Hicks. So this way, friends, there are many economists who have over a period of time contributed to the evolution of the economic thought. And recently we saw how the new schools of thought are emerging. We are having behavioral economic school of thought, where we saw the Nobel Prize got by Richard Thaler, and now we are having institutional economics. And how we are moving towards the era, in the era of globalization, in the era of digital economy, many more schools of thoughts are yet to come. So let us go back to the slides and see which are the other important schools of thought, and with that, after that, we'll wind up the session. So just be focused. Yeah, we saw the books. You saw how beautiful the books is. Wealth of Nations, Alfred Marshall Principles of Economics, Marx thing that is there, that is Das Capital, and one more book I showed you in that clip, and that is my most beloved book, and I'm speaking about what happened in the 20th century. In 20th century, Great Depression happened, and microeconomics was of no use. Microeconomics couldn't answer the questions that happened. Why Great Depression came? What was the reason for such a slack thing that happened? Why the stock markets collapsed? And how to revive it? So the answer was given to us by the Keynesian school. Keynesian school has evolved from neoclassical school and Marxist school. So that is Keynesian economics for us. Friends, British economist John Maynard Keynes is the father of modern macroeconomics. So you can see the book that I showed you, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. What he says, Keynes' early 1900s economic theories had a huge impact on the economic policies of all the governments all around the world. So he is the founder of macroeconomics. The founder of macroeconomics as a special part of economics was prominent British economist Lord John Maynard Keynes, who in 1936 published his famous book, General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. Just we saw that particular book, a big white book. So he showed that macroeconomics is a special subject and some special methods of analysis. His contribution to economic theory was so large that it was called as the Keynesian Revolution or Keynesian School of Economic Thought. This is John Maynard Keynes for you, friends. Just a few tidbits about Keynesian school. It evolved from neoclassical and Marxist school. He was the first to tell that the role of government plays a very important role. So he spoke about government intervention, need for government intervention. And he said, we need to focus on the short run. So he said, in the long run, we all are dead. We are not worried about the long run. What matters is short run. So most of the Keynesian school of thought, though it is at a macroeconomic level, it is speaking about short run, because according to Keynes, in the long run, we all are dead. That is, long run makes no impact on the economy as such as much as the short run. And lastly, it is he who spoke about aggregate demand, aggregate supply, aggregate consumption, aggregate investment, how these concepts of aggregates play an important role. This is what is macroeconomics to you all. In our earlier sessions, we saw microeconomics and macroeconomics. Here you are seeing what is the microeconomic schools of thought and how the macroeconomics came into the picture. Having understood Keynesian school, let us see which are the next thing. And he was the person who emphasized on government expenditure. He said that deficit financing, budget of the government, expenditure of the government plays a vital role in the economic development of the country. He said that depression can be avoided, recession can be avoided if government increases its expenditure. He has said that during the times of depression, dig the ground, give the money to the people, give the purchasing power to the people, let them go and buy something in the market. So what will happen? The government expenditure creates demand, demand in turn creates further demand, and that leads to multiplier effect, and the economy will come out of recession or depression. That is the contribution of Keynes. He also spoke about business cycles. That is same. Recession, boom, depression, boom, recession, depression, recovery. So these concepts. So whenever we are facing recovery, we'll move up, we'll go to the boom where everything is costly, inflation, expectations are high, and after a point we go to recession. And how to come out of recession? Here the role of the government plays a very important part. So next is, after Keynesian school, we are having something that emerged from neoclassical school, that is monetarist school. So यहाँ पे he says, the person says, पैसा बोलता है, money is very important. So monetarist theory or monetarism is an approach to economics that centers on the money supply. The basic idea behind monetarist thinking is that the size of the money supply is important than any other factor affecting the economy. So here comes the role of money. So friends, it is Milton Friedman, the monetarist school founding father, an American economist. He is a statistician, a public intellectual. He led the monetarist incarnation of Chicago School. So one more school of thought, Chicago School of Thought, and Milton Friedman belongs to Chicago School of Thought. He was the opponent of Keynesian economics, and he wanted to show that it is money that plays a very important role. He believed that the money supply was an important instrument in conducting economic policies. So here comes, if Keynesian economics is about fiscal economy, Milton Friedman's economics is about monetary economics. That is what is fiscalism versus monetarism. And today we have understood as students of economics, both play a very important role. If Milton Friedman is Rama, then Keynesian is the Krishna, and both of them have shown that both fiscalism and monetarism, how important it is to deal with the economic growth. A few highlights of monetary school. It evolved from neoclassical school. It focused on monetary policy. It also spoke about supply of money and business cycles. So here comes supply of money. No one had spoken about money supply. So M1, M2, M3, M4, all these concepts that is there, it belongs to our monetary economics. So it gained importance after stagflation. Keynes said, depression से बाहर निकलना है, government spending is important, and that will automatically lead to increase in employment, increase in income, increase in demand, increase in investment, and so on. But there was a time in 1971 where the economy witnessed stagflation. What is stagflation? Inflation भी बढ़ रहा है, employment भी बढ़ रहा है. So earlier they thought that there is a trade-off. Inflation को कम करना है तो employment बढ़ेगा, employment को कम करना है तो inflation बढ़ेगा. But now what they are saying, inflation also is increasing and employment is also increasing, and such a situation was called as stagflation. And to answer stagflation, monetary school played a very important role. So here comes the theory of money, that is quantity theory of money, Fisher's equation, and all those things. MV is equal to PT, as to how the quantity of money in the economy decides the price level, inflation, and the economic activities. So this is our monetary school of thought. And friends, from Keynesian school and monetary school came one more school that is called as New Keynesians. And after New Keynesians, there is something called as behavioral economics. So these are the present schools of thought that you can see. So, and after that we can see there is one more school of thought which is called as post-Keynesian school of thought or modern monetary theories of economics. So these are the various schools of thought in a nutshell that has evolved from classical schools to post-Keynesian schools. Friends, in between there are many other schools that I have skipped, which because of time limit I didn't bring into the picture, but each and every school has contributed significantly in the evolution of economic school of thought. And all these theories, friends, are macroeconomic school of thought. The dividing line, you can see the red line, uske upar everything is micro, and below that everything is macro. This is what is microeconomics and macroeconomics, and the schools of thought that related themselves to micro level and those at macro level. Or एक interesting thing, see the evolution: classical school, neoclassical school, Keynesian school, post-Keynesian school, behavioral economics. So this is how our economy is evolving from time to time. And in between this thing, there is Austrian school, there is Chicago school, there is institutional economics that is coming into the picture. So many schools are there. And not only that, of late you can see with regard to digital economy, one more new school of thought may come into the picture. And we are speaking today about welfare economics. Today we are speaking about what is that, globalization. We are speaking about digital economy. So many schools of thought are there for us to, so you can just specialize in any of the schools of thought and you can just make your career in economics. So this is all about evolution of economic thought. These are the books that I have referred, and just for your reference: History of Economic Thought by R.R. Paul, Evolution of Modern Economics by Richard T. Gill, and the many books that you can find it. So friends, with this I come to an end of today's topic, and with this I would like to say bye bye to you.